Okay, so the universal reabsorption right now is for like say they are the right now pending Sangyo allegedly her act of that giving that bottle of water to that Sangyo to contact solvent within the children for three languages. All that would be definitely the stadiums like insecurities definitely my brother. She would be like trying to like desperately right now trying to like not reveal her true vulnerable self to like Sangyo, not even to like Sangyo, exactly because of not trusting, still not trusting anyone. Um, in this like Squid Game is definitely my favorite them, especially because of like it would just have to do with like all the everything she has failure has faced after entering into like the Squid Game. Then most probably her like struggling to like trust anyone would definitely have to do with like incident happened in throughout her life from like the past. Like she might have been like tricked and cheated by like multiple people in like the past that remember them that might have been the reason for like Celia having the like kind of like a personality being formed as she grew up with like her totally being unable to like trust anyone at all so easily at all. That's definitely my personal opinion. So precisely because of this reason alone that like even right now Xavier is like still not fully trusting even Sangyo and hence why that she's like keeping that guard up and telling Sangyo that Sangyo if that like her help wasn't for free and Sangyo can pay her back the next day. But in that definitely my personal impression that like Xavier definitely offering that bottle of water like because it's only out of that Savior would have been totally out of that Savior, totally remembering her own parents that she would be obviously missing so much that she might have seen remembered her own parents while she saw that Dolman just struggling with that fever. That's definitely my favorite question. And that would be like so reason for like Savior and like rushing into that offering that help precisely with like about the water to like son. That's definitely my favorite impression. Also, like definitely my preferred version right now and for like Sanjeev right now laughing in responsible precisely because of like Sanjeev genuinely believing that like Savior was like being honest about like her dialogue that basically the help that she offered wasn't for free. And the Sanjeev has to like do that like just to say Savior was like genuine and honest about that dialogue of would be what like Sangyeon would be right now totally singing and solely due to like Sangyeon not knowing about like failure of like black in backstory and about her situation with like her parents and everything. So like this would be the sole reason for like Sangyeon would be like right now would have right now genuinely believe the words of like Savior and that would be like sole reason for like Sangyeon right now. Uh, like Sangyeon definitely would have expected that like Sangyeon might have like when he received like the help from Savior with like the water bottle like amber the drink. Sangyeon might have genuinely thought that basically it was like a genuine help from Savior out of like pure empathy. Which even while it genuinely was like Sangyeon right now with the Savior asking for telling Sangyeon that the help person for Project Sangyeon has genuinely believed that the words of Savior is definitely, and hence why Sangyeon right now is like laughing is definitely, I don't think with that absolute shock because like it might have been definitely such a dialogue from Savior still wasn't totally, was totally unexpected for like Sangyeon and hence why he's like laughing in shock of hearing that from Savior. That's definitely, I doesn't really yeah, so that's definitely one of the real crucial right now, but like the offers to get candidate right now going crazy and like threatening like the remaining game workers. Like I'm looking right now. First of all, definitely like it would be like the frontman's decision to like the game workers won't be lying at all. Precisely, it's only due to like even right now like among like the Squid Game workers surrounding like in the presence of like the Squid Game candidate like to precise to Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask who were kind of talking in an insensitive manner towards like the doctor while the doctor Squid Game candidate was performing with the procedure and everything for like the audience and everything. Like those two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask even though they were talking in a rude manner and making fun of like that author. Like still they would be like those William workers with like the triangle mask would be like the precise I'm considering would be like this currently like the that sold to game workers among like the number of good game workers present in that room who would be like still would be seeing that their organ selling as their ultimate priority. Is definitely my first and precisely because of this reason I'm considering right now, even with like the doctor right now threatening the Squid Game workers in that room right now, with like him not getting like him not with them not knowing that the games up ahead like beforehand. Like I was trying like they would be like not lying about it. Even like the Squid Game workers won't be lying about it, and they would be like genuine about like them not knowing like the games up ahead. It's also definitely my birthday, especially because of like definitely for those two triangle mask Squid Game workers like definitely the doctor saying the doctor candidate staying alive would be like extremely high priority. It's definitely my birthday. And I'm also bring like most likely the among like the Squid Game candidates there won't be like much doctors remaining at all. It's definitely my good impression. So this precise doctor speaking candidate like his person would be like extremely would be seen as like extremely essential for them to like continue like the for like those who game workers like the dragon must still continue their like whole secret of selling. It's definitely my good impression. So definitely like what might have happened, but definitely I'm still thinking about the impression that like definitely because of like the Dr. Korean candidate and his team like not prioritizing stealth and basically like it might have been like especially with like the frontman monitoring everything and also bring like seeing like the team of like the top in like the tug of war uh, in the tug of war game like basically like that might have straight away created that extreme suspicion in like the frontman straight away as to like the possibility of like their like the possibility of like the game of like the tug of war being leaked before like the game events began. It's definitely my brother. So like he might have precisely like the frontman might have precisely at that point on seeing like the team with like the majority of like the teams consisting of like that showed up for like the tug of war like consisting of like mainly like men considering like at that point like I'm considering like the frontman might have straight away got on suspicion and he might have certainly checked like the CCTVs of like CCTV visuals of like the uh, precise location that the location of that huge room, huge white room where like the teams were supposed to be selected, and at that point he might have noticed precisely like DXO like basically even rejecting that precise female team member and like how like DXO was like the first to like form his team. Uh, and basically the remaining teams were like trying to copy DXO's team. Like basically all this like the front man might have noticed. So like I'm referring like the front man precisely after noticing this, the front man might have consciously decided that we need to like only reveal to not even reveal like the games up ahead to like to not even the Squid Game or the definitely one of the person. So I think because right now definitely like the front man would be aware of like they are being like a traitor among like the Squid Game workers who was like leaking like the game like even beforehand to one of like the Squid Game candidates would be one thing the front man would be right now fully aware of the second level premise. So like right now like the front man's task would be to like precisely and the front man right now would be also going through like multiple CCTV visuals to figure out who that traitor among like the Squid Game worker is already like this will be happening right now. It's definitely very much so precisely because of this reason I'm different from my might have also decided to like and I'm also bringing like the scenario to happen right now is definitely for like the front man only revealing what the game up ahead, like what the next game is to like the studio workers only right before like the only when there will be only very few minutes left for like the games to begin, next game to begin. Only at that point is whenever the right now like the front man would be once again revealing what like the Squid Game is next Squid Game is to like the Squid Game workers and like my good impression as for like from when still revealing what the next Squid Game is even though with like just it will be just like a with like a difference of a few minutes like still like the from for like the from man to reveal Amber Gupring deciding to like reveal what the next Squid Game is still beforehand to like the Squid Game workers would be that's like scenario that I'm expecting to happen, and that will be like the conscious intent by like the frontman to basically find who that culprit is like of leaking like the skill game, like who's like that traitor among the skill game of the squad, like the frontman to find that out and the frontman revealing the next skill game beforehand, like just a few minutes before, and basically quickly the frontman going up to like the monitoring room and the frontman guy trying to like uh, figure out like find out like who among the game of is like leaking the information. So like the scenario that I was to bring this exactly this, and I was to bring like right now with like the Syrian candidate being angry and going crazy, it was like him threatening like the remaining Syrian workers in that room. Like about to bring since like the doctor's presence is like absolutely necessary for those who should game would be necessary for those who should game workers of like the triangle bounce and also bring right now them totally succeeding in like somehow succeeding in like calming down the doctor and then giving doctor that assurance that they will be able to them totally blindly giving that assurance to like the doctor that they will definitely be getting still getting even though there's like a delay they'll still will be getting the information about what the next game will be and they will be definitely ensuring to like get that information to like before like the next game will be standing will be starting will be like that assurance I'm going to bring right now for those to triangle mask game workers to like give the doctor and that way then calming down like the doctor like the scenario that I'm going right now. Yet like I'm different, the doctor would be like extremely scared for his life and like extremely feeling uneasy and like I'm different him returning back with like the procedure done like I'm different like doctor basically returning back to like that if I Squid Game candidate, there like all the remaining Squid Game candidate would be so like as if he's returning from like the restroom. So like I'm going to straight away like right now this time especially since like the procedure the surgery procedure took far more time than usual. I'm going to bring definitely especially like all the remaining Squid Game candidates in like that say Squid Game candidate room would be like especially feeling especially suspicious and noticing like the not Squid Game candidate especially when he will be returning back to that room. Especially because he will be returning back after so much time. It's definitely my motivation. So even like the whole restroom excuse like that like definitely like each and every single school candidate at that point itself would be noticing like the doctor and they would definitely be genuine straight away feeling that like it's the doctor that game candidate like has some so it's like up to something and basically it wasn't just him going to the restroom the reason for like him like taking so long and to basically return back to like the Squid Game candidate home. This is definitely the scenario that I'm looking for. So like all the remaining Squid Game candidates like noticing that just of Squid Game candidate and the scenario that I'm looking is like to left the doctor Squid Game candidate returning back with like a gloomy face and like I'm looking right then it's like DXO like asking excitedly asking like the doctor has to like what the next game is and I'm looking at that point like the doctor members to bring him to like not lie and him to like straight away tell the truth to like the so because like the doctor would be fearing like the possibility of like him lying would if he lies to DXO like if it isn't like a DXO is like a scary person like about the doctor might fear the possibility of like him even lying to DXO like would end up with like DXO losing his trust on the doctor and at that point like DXO might straight away like try to take doctor's life would be the only that fear with the doctor like I'm just sort of solely due to that fear that the doctor being honest with like DXO and telling DXO that like he didn't get like the information after like what the next game is and at that point I was trying and DXO totally losing it like way more than the doctor and I was DXO being extremely angry and like maybe DXO like attacking the doctor one is also like a possible that I was doing and DXO totally threatening like with like an extremely intense and angry face like an aggressive manner like DXO totally threatening the doctor and telling the doctor that like if like for like the next Squid Game begins like if the doctor is not able to bring like the information as to like what the next Squid Game is then like after like the next Squid Game like they should be ensuring to if the doctor even survives like the next Squid Game like they should be ensuring once they will be returning back to like the Squid Game candidate from at that point itself like they should be ensuring to like take the life of like the doctor would be that threat that I'm going to bring the to like make to the doctor at that point itself it's like the scenario that I'm going to bring and I'm going to bring like the poor doctor like at that point like being extremely worried and tense like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And the scenario that I was interpreting is for like the doctor to like once again tell like the Squid Game workers that he wants to use like the first phone, but like I'm interpreting at that point like the Squid Game workers not even allowing the doctor. And those Squid Game workers would be like not the Squid Game workers present there, would be like not the Squid Game workers who the doctor would be having this like secret connection with like when he performed like the surgery, and also like them not allowing the doctor to like use the restroom again, like them telling the doctor that you already have used like the restroom once. So along the lines those are only coming. So the scenario that I'm interpreting is like the doctor being extremely tense and the doctor not being able to like sleep at all. So like my the impression that like the doctor might even walking up those stairs the doctor might be like hoped that at least at that very last moment like he might run into one of like those at least one among those civilian workers to be part of who will be having that connection with like the doctor. So like still I'm considering like the doctor's hopes totally backfiring is like absolutely none of the civilian workers not even saying anything at all to like stop have to be walking past each of them because civilian workers is like the scenario that I'm considering that way like the doctor and the so all of them entering like the next good game without knowing like what the next good game will be is like the scenario that I'm considering. So like the professor or good game I'm considering uh DXO and Doctor and like Zendapin would be like entering like the fourth game without having any idea of like what the fourth game would be. Just like the scenario that I'm going to talk about. And the precise reason I'm considering for such a scenario that I'm considering is like from my personal I'm considering like even before like the fourth game like before like a few minutes before like the fourth game like the like frontman would have revealed like what the fourth game is beforehand, just a few minutes beforehand to let the remaining game workers and would be carefully monitoring all the game workers in that process from that point on to see if like to find like the traitor among the game workers. But like the scenario that I was developing is for like absolutely no one among them to like leak the game beforehand to anyone at all, any of like the Squid Game candidate at all. And like the precise reason would be like to exact to precise Squid Game workup with like the triangle mark, who would have definitely had that organ sending as their priority and who would have that absolute need for like the doctor and considering them to like most likely have like that exact previous night by precisely like the scenario that I'm considering is thinking on to calculate what might have happened would be like precisely after like those two game workers with like the triangle mask after them calming down like the doctor and sending the doctor back to like to the room where like all the Squid Game candidates are like at that point I'm considering after sending the doctor back like I'm considering they would have totally still not forgotten about like the number 29 like creating all that suspicion with like him not knowing as to like what happened during the during that earlier day of like the in that whole procedure room during that very earlier day. That incident of like the procedure room in which like number 29 was present, like the fact that number 29 had said that he knew what happened that day. Basically, that suspicion still wouldn't have left those two Philippine candidates, especially Marcos with like the trying about. So like I'm considering precisely after like and I'm considering right now for Jun-ho. He like basically also definitely on the Korean version right now with like two Squid Game workers with like the subtle mask like transporting like the organs like one of the that Squid Game one among them would be like Jun-ho and like the other would be that precise Squid Game worker who was in like the door right in like in the door right next to like Jun-ho's room. It's definitely my friend. So who had seen like Jun-ho struggling with the keys to Jun-ho's room in like the beginning. It's definitely my friend. So the scenario that I'm also bringing is definitely jump out. It's like absolute sense of justice won't be able to like actually do the whole organ transportation. It's definitely another thing. So like I'm also bringing precisely as Jun-ho as well as like the other Squid Game worker will be walking towards like the coast. Like I'm also bringing Jun-ho. I'm also bringing it will be most likely the Squid Game worker, the other Squid Game worker that will be like walking in the front of like Jun-ho walking behind him while carrying like the what might be like the box that might contain like the organs. Definitely remember the remember. So like I'm remembering so like I'm remembering John Ho be like totally following him with like the walking right behind him with like the intent to like precisely to to proceed according to like what he would be doing until John Ho sees us where exactly the where exactly at the path of like the post would be like the precise location where like the boat will be arriving. Like Jun-ho would be walking behind him. That Squid Game worker with like the precise intent to like precisely like attack that precise Squid Game worker at the precise point when Jun-ho will be able to like find out be able to like see from a distance like the boat and like the coast where like the boat arrives. So definitely my requirement. So like I'm wondering that exactly to happen with like Jun-ho like following that Squid Game worker with like the audience and like the moment like Jun-ho would be seeing like the boat at a distance itself, like at that point itself definitely Jun-ho with the like apprehensions of justice definitely won't be like doing like to just to like maintain still like definitely everything like Jun-ho definitely still with this like absolute sense of justice won't be doing the organ ratings like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm wondering that exactly to happen like simply the moment like Jun-ho would be able to like see like the boat at the shoreline from a distance itself, at that point still like I'm looking Jun-ho like would be like quickly pulling out Jun-ho's weapon and would be straight away threatening that to him of the ring like the front and telling him to like just drop the box that will be containing the organ. And then Jun-ho and Lucifer threatening him and telling him that basically you are from here on you have to do everything that I say or like I will need like that I will inform about like your secret organ business to like the authorities to the remaining studio workers. Only along the lines I'm threatening Jun-ho and Lucifer at that point threatening that other studio worker with like the aftermarket like the scenario that I'm delivering. So like at that point I was delivering like that the game worker like the aftermath like him dropping that box containing the organs and then delivering him totally then starting to like speak up and him totally telling Jun-ho that like you really think I don't know you are like an infiltrator like that would it is like the dialogue and delivering at that point for the other studio worker to tell Jun-ho you really think I didn't notice you struggling with the keys that the moment he saw that Jump was struggling with the keys at that point itself, it was confirmed for him that like Jump was like an infiltrator. So like that way, basically, like him talking back to like Jump was like the scenario that I was developing like, and I was doing at that point him telling Jump that like if I report to like the other Squid Game workers who are not part of that to the other Squid Game workers that like you are like an infiltrator at that point like the it will be the end of the road of like you infiltrator will be along the lines like the other Squid Game workers will be at that point telling Jun-ho like the scenario that I go to them. So like at that point Jun-ho being scared and like at that point the other Squid Game worker telling Jun-ho that like from here on like and I was wondering at that point that the Squid Game worker telling Jun-ho that basically, don't worry, I'm not that he's not going to do the organ trading, and basically, but instead, like Jun-ho would have to like listen to everything that he says. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. So them dropping the box containing the organs right there, or like then throwing it to like the sea or something, or like them hiding that box containing the object somewhere in like the island, and basically them both returning back to like the studio game building is like the scenario that I was like. But like all this, while all this would be happening, like they would be like secretly spied by the precise, those precise two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask, like them after coming down, those precise two Squid Game workers in like the triangle mask who have the organ trading as like their priority, like basically then after calming down like the doctor and sending back doctor like number different then would have straight away with their source of patient towards like the number of engineers William worker like they would have only been secretly spying on what like Janko and the spying on the whole transportation process is definitely with so like by secretly stalking and spying like they would have only seen like Janko and that these two game workers who are assigned with the duty of like transportation with the organs like them only either throwing away like the organs to the box containing the organs to like the sea or like then hiding like the box containing organs in like China and at that point while the jump point like the school game worker would be making their way back towards like the school game building at that point the Pangol these two school game workers look like the triangle mask confronting Junko as well as like the other studio worker and asking them like what exactly are they doing, like who exactly are they, like basically that by questioning them and like I'm going to bring at that point like fight to break out and I'm going to bring in that fight like definitely I'm going to bring the team of like Jun-ho and like the Korean worker like definitely Jun-ho would be like definitely skilled in like fighting and all that. So like definitely Jun-ho and like the Korean worker would be like totally quickly offering and debating and taking the life of those two precise Korean workers with like the triangle masters like the scenarios that I'm going to bring. And then I'm going to bring Jun-ho and like the Korean worker returning back to like that precise uh, operation room in like that precise Squid Game building where like at that point I was referring like that other studio worker would be like totally and like at that point I was referring that operation room there still will be like a bunch of like remaining studio workers and I was referring like them all totally being part of like the plan of like that other studio worker who basically have right now told Jung-ho to like listen to everything he says and basically at that point like those remaining Squid Game workers in that process room like totally confronting like Jung-ho that and them telling Jung-ho that we all know that you are like an infiltration like the scan result like when you precisely entered into like the room scan results precisely showed that basically you are not even a Squid Game worker like basically that way like them confronting Jung-ho and basically them revealing to Jump about their goal to like basically their actual only goal that's to precisely steal like all that money to trick like the frontman and steal and all the remaining studio workers and steal all that money and the Squid Game candidates and to steal all that money in like the black piggy bank and like them threatening Jump for that basically if you don't team up with us and help us out with our goal then we will be totally exposing was like the infiltrator to like the frontman, and that would be like that would be the end of the road for you jump would be along the lines like the things will be happening is like the situation the scenario is like what I'm referring to. Like at that point like Jump deciding to like temporarily team up with these Squid Game workers to with like the but like I'm referring like Jump would be definitely determined to like totally take advantage of like this situation as well to like to eventually trick all of them to basically trick all of them into like making them steadily work for like Jumpo with that absolute stealth and that way in the name of like basically stealing all that money from like the glass piggy bank for Jumpo to like totally use all those great number of studio workers to precisely bring down like the person that would be running like the studio in the Syrian building. Like precisely the front man, like the front man definitely Jumpo would have seen like the front man precisely while that precisely towards the end of like the second Squid Game when like the front man had showed up to basically take the life of like that one Squid Game worker like at that point, like definitely Jun-ho would have seen the front man and seeing how like the outfit of like the front man is like totally different. Definitely Jun-ho might be right now part of this of Jun-ho that he's like the ultimate leader and like the person running like to give. So like Jun-ho intent would be to like essentially bring him down. Like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So that's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like the Jun-ho with like his secret intent to like bring down like the front man Jun-ho like totally deciding to like all the those remaining studio workers into acting as a black jumpers like only part of like the plan to like help them to like basically steal all that money from like the last big event. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like from that point on, like Jun-ho getting all that absolute help from all the great number of studio workers to basically like from that point on like Jumpo like moving around in like the studio building and everything being that much more easier for Jumpo precisely with Jumpo retrieving all that help from all those remaining studio workers in that place operational room at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking and them like at that point in during that interaction I was seeing them revealing them since like they would all be knowing that Jumpo is like an operator like them totally telling Jumpo about all the crucial details and everything about like the Squid Game building as to like how everything that Jumbo needs to watch out for within like the Squid Game building, all the rules and everything is like the scenario that I'm looking at. And that way with them giving all this like crucial knowledge to like Jumbo like basically moving around and like Jumbo's like attempt to like in Jumbo's like attempt to like bring down eventually bring down the front man like basically Jumbo's like mobility and moving around within like the Squid Game building and with all of like Jumbo's secret goals to like all that will become that much more easier for Jumbo's like the scenario that I'm looking at. since like these two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask, according to my theory impression, they would be more likely taken the life of like precisely the duo of like Jun-ho and like the other Squid Game worker with like this triangle mask with like the neighbor to like the room of like Jun-ho. But separately precisely because of those two, according to my theory impression, those separately precisely those two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask alone that would be having like the organ trading as their priority and separating them that like I'm separating definitely for the doctors to give candidate to like that way not receive like information beforehand about like what the next course to game would be even leading up to like the point where like the doctor would be like entering like the fourth to game like even at that point like the doctor as well as DXO as well as the entire team would be this time during like the fourth to game would be entering like the fourth to game with absolutely no idea at all as to like what the fourth to game would be like the scenario that I'm going to bring yet like I was bring and definitely I'm also bringing DXO not at all taking the doctor in his like team, while at the same time DXO would be even threatening the doctor and at that point itself and telling DXO would be extremely angry and like DXO would be telling the doctor that like just you wait until and I'm also bring like DXO even telling the doctor that like he better die in like the first game because like if he survives like the first game then he would have to like face DXO DXO's rap would be along the lines like DXO would be threatening that doctor. So like I'm considering that doctor speaking candidate extremely nervously like I'm considering like him totally attending like the fourth studium and I'm considering like maybe I'm considering even at that I'm considering two possibilities like at that point like that that doctor I'm considering maybe like the first two games won't be like a team Squid Game. That's not also like the possibility that I'm considering. So like I'm considering if that's the case, then I'm considering like that dog like nervously, extremely scarily, like without having a clue of like what the next game would be like the dog like in an extremely afraid manner, like basically attempting that Squid Game, fourth Squid Game, but like extremely luckily for like the dog, like I'm considering either that fourth Squid Game being like Squid Game that would be totally advantageous for like the doctors with for that Squid Game candidate with the skills, or like the other person like even though extremely scared and nervously like still the doctor like by himself like struggling his way and like surviving like the fan winning with the fourth Squid Game as well as like the scenario that I'm considering. Or like the other possibilities that if like the fourth Squid Game is like a team Squid Game then I was bring the DXO straight away, like rejecting the doctor and the doctor ending up being part of like Sangyon's team. But like that's like morally like least likely possible scenario that I'm going to anyway, definitely I don't remember that like the doctor game candidate would definitely survive like the fourth game without know being able to like know the fourth game what the fourth game is beforehand. It's like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And after like the fourth game would be over and like this game candidate would be coming back to like prove at that point itself, I was running DXA as well, definitely surviving like that for the game was like the scenario that I was running. But like I was thinking maybe like the DXO would be like still surviving, but like he would be like on the verge of like losing like the fourth to game, get like just like he would have barely won survive and finish like the fourth to game is also like the scenario that I'm looking at. The moment like he the fourth to game will be over, like DXO would be like extremely enraged with like the doctor that at that point till while the friend back to like the room where on speaking candidate would be like at that point itself I'm delivering like the access straight away. At that point itself I'm definitely bringing the access straight away attacking like the doctor and like I'm delivering like at that point simply so trying to like attack and take the life of like the doctor speaking candidate and I'm delivering like the doctor candidate being badly injured and him totally running and trying to like get run away from like get away from the exo and the exo at that point be chasing after the dog and with that no like all the remaining speaking candidates will be like moving away as like the dog will be running towards them and then eventually like the dog running towards where like Sanjivan and his team would be. So like at that point I'm also trying like especially like the exo straight away chasing after like dog at that point check back and Sanjivan like stepping protecting the doctor and stepping up. And along with like Sangyo, like basically Ali Sangu, and all of them would be like Soviet, and all of them would be like together that would be protecting the doctor at that point and like standing in front of like DXO at that point is like the scenario that I'm considering. So like DXO at that point would be telling like Anthony would be telling them to like move away, like that like he wants to move away if you don't want to die. It would be along the line DXO would be telling at that point. to like Sang-yeon and all of them. And at that point, like Sang-yeon, like not being afraid, like Sang-yeon, like still holding on to that courage, and basically Sang-yeon's team and that team, like showing that absolute unity in protecting that offer at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm going. And so like at that point, like I was really trying to force his way, trying to attack Sanji on like the scenario that I'm considering, and that will force his way into like trying to take the life of the dog. So at that point, like as like they should be like attempting at that, like I'm just trying to write them for like especially Ali, like to especially stop the exos. Ali as well as like all the remaining team members in like Sanji and all of them like attacking like the exos together and pushing the exos away that way is like the scenario that I'm going to protect. And so like at that point, I was bring like none of the Exos like team members at that point were really not coming in for the Exos help. It's also like about that I was doing because like the Exos team members maybe at that point would be totally shocked, but like especially because like unlike rejecting like the female member, the Exo rejecting like the female member in like the Exos team in like part of our team like right now since like the Exos own team members would be right now showing like would be shockingly witnessing the current situation, but like the Exo would be right now totally contrary to that, like would be trying to like take the life of like one of the one of the team members. And so like at that point, I was different maybe like the Exos own team members would be totally scared by like how like aggressively the Exo would be at that point acting towards his own team members that time. Like the Exos own team members not coming to help the Exo out. That's like the one possible scenario that I'm looking. That way the Exo being like pushed away by the entire like Sangyon's team, and that way like the doctor getting protected, and that way like the doctor ending up in Sangyon's team. It's like the scenario that I'm going to predict. That's like one control that I'm going to predict. The other point is like the EXO like being put away by like Sangyon's entire team, and I'm considering like at that point like the EXO's like team members at that point is like angrily rushing towards like Sangyon's team to like attack to collectively attack Sangyon's team, but like at that point it's like luckily for like Sangyon's team like I'm considering like the Squid Game worker would be like at that point coincidentally at that point itself would be showing up for some specific reason. So like at that point itself like that for the Squid Game workers like basically stopping like the fight is like the other possible scenario that I'm considering and not the question. Okay, so like definitely not the impression right now that like Jun-ho right now wouldn't be like casually or like carelessly asking like what are you doing as like potentially during like the organ transportation as like the other Squid Game occur with like the round mask is like moving that to refrigerator or something like this to open up that secret passageway and everything. And also like Jun-ho asking like who are the VIPs like as if like Jun-ho's like as like Jun-ho himself was like making it far too evident to like the other Squid Game worker that like he's like an infiltrator. Like basically, it wouldn't be just something. My personal impression that might definitely not be something that John Ho will be like carelessly doing. Like my personal impression that like precisely John Ho by now might be like well and fully aware that the other Squid Game worker will set the round mark, even though he might not be showing it like that. Still, that Squid Game worker, other Squid Game worker next top is like the Squid Game of the round mask with Jan Ho right now during like the organ transportation and everything. He will be like well and fully aware that like Jan Ho he is in fact well and fully aware that Jan Ho is like an infiltrator. Yet like he's okay with it would be along the lines Jan Ho would be like thinking it's definitely my personal and hence why it would be like the first reason for like Jan Ho right now only being like absolutely free really like asking him as to, like what is this, what is that, and everything is definitely as like a total like someone who's like totally new to like this place. Definitely my personal theory to be especially because of like Jumbo feeling that kind of like a certain level of comfort with that other game worker that like he won't basically would be that the other game worker is like knows and is like totally okay with like the fact that Jumbo is like an inspirator would be along the lines Jumbo the thing and hence Jumbo asking all these questions definitely my personal theory and especially since like when Jumbo had even entered into that operation room itself, like basically like the precise person Spring Morgan to scan Janho as well. Basically, Janho at that point itself, it might have been far too evident for like for this for Janho that especially that scan might have only ended up showing the wrong result that Janho like through that scanning itself, like the fact that Janho is like an infiltrator might have been obvious to like the person to like that precise other Squid Game worker who was like along with Jun-ho as well as like the precise Squid Game worker who was doing the scanning for them both like the fact that Jun-ho was like an infiltrator might have been like obviously evident at that point would be one thing that Jun-ho might be like well fully aware of. And yet since like they didn't attack Jun-ho or like uh, expose Jun-ho this entire time, like definitely Jun-ho right now would be like totally believing that they are okay with like the fact that Jun-Ho is like an infiltrator. So like Jun-Ho as well would be totally that they would have some need for like Jun-Ho, like they would have like some use with like Jun-Ho, and that would be the potential and so for like them keeping the crucial information that Jun-Ho is like an infiltrator, a secret is also what Jun-Ho would be right now thinking is definitely my good impression. So like potentially because of all these reasons, definitely my good impression right now with like that precise other studio workup with like the round mask right now during like the organ transportation, like right now with him like pulling out this weapon on Jun-Ho right now. Definitely my good impression is that like Jun-Ho still would be confident that he's not going to like after like keeping Jun-Ho's like identity as like an infiltrator figure in this entire time that like that other Squid Game worker is not even though he pulled out his weapon right now against Jun-Ho, still he won't be like taking the life of Jun-Ho will be one thing that Jun-Ho right now will be absolutely confident and about is definitely my good impression. So like I'm just different Jun-Ho right now not trying to like attack him back or like or like that other game but like I'm during Jun-Ho basically standing still and basically like waiting to hear what it is that other student has to say, especially since like he had also like done the whole Morse code as well, like from the other room. That as well will be precisely the exact studio worker that has right now pulled the weapon against Jun-Ho, definitely my book premise. So like Jun-Ho will be patiently waiting for that moment where that other studio worker would be like actually giving that serious interaction and would be having that serious talk with like Jun-Ho where like he will be like asking for he will be like demanding some sort of item from Jun-Ho. Like Jun-Ho will be patiently waiting for that moment stepping in with him. So like right now it's I was wondering Jun-Ho not attacking him back like but Jun-Ho is totally standing still and basically waiting for him to like basically reveal whatever it is that he has to tell Jun-Ho. It's like the scenario that I'm in. So like definitely able to bring that other film up after all this like definitely not going to try to take Jun-Ho's life, but like will be even while pulling out the weapon, like he will be only like uh, it would be just to like have that like as more serious talk with like Jun-Ho. Definitely my personal theory and prediction. And I'm wondering that serious talk alone to like just happen right now. Where like I'm wondering he would be right now only revealing to like Jun-Ho about like his intention and it would be just him alone, but like the majority of like that studio members in that operation room would be on his team. And the specific amount of information that like their common goal will be to like precisely steals all that money from the glass piggy bank. And like him telling Janko that him demanding and him threatening Janko that like that he has no other option but to like tell them with their gold to like steal all that money from the piggy bank. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and I was very interested. Also like definitely the Korean direction right now is that basically the percent of the Korean candidate like him still not temporarily getting into any trouble even after like him attacking those two Supreme workers like the triangle masters like the scenario that I'm explaining. That's still totally playing out in like the favor of temporarily for in like the favor of like the doctors to give candidates like the scenario that I'm explaining. So the scenario that I'm considering is for like the dog is thinking ventilate even though he had panicked and he's like he has ran away from the operation room like I'm considering still him to like totally go up to like the precise first room and him to like basically get back his sword before and I'm considering him totally in a calculative manner like basically ensuring to like clean up his clothes before returning back to like the room of the student candidate. It's like the scenario that I'm considering. That will be how like the doctor student candidate will be entering back to like the room of the remaining student candidates is like the scenario that I'm playing. And that's for like the person monitoring like the CCTV who's part of like the team of like the doctor and all this student of like him about him being shocked by seeing like him being shocked by like the initial behavior of like the as he's like running through like in like the CCTV monitor. But like I'm considering like him totally still like doing his job and erasing like the footage of like the of coming from like the operation room and basically to like the experiment or that CCTV footage like him certainly deleting that and replacing that those CCTV footage is like the scenario that I was like. So like the doctor once again being said is like the scenario that I was like. Even though I'm considering maybe like the precise good game what the guards would be like standing right outside like the door of like the Squid guard would be like standing right outside like the door to like the room where like all the remaining Squid Game candidates would be that those Squid Game candidates some of the maybe feeling like a certain level of frustration as to like so being taking so much time after like using the restroom. It's also like about that temperature or like about maybe those precise Squid Game guards would be also part of like the team of like the doctor and like those other student workers is also definitely a possibility that about the topic. So definitely that way like the doctor safe here back to like the student candidate. So, and I'm also like still like how exactly like would be only temporarily for like the time being will be like in like the doctor's favor. Like I'm considering but the reason would be like on this very night like that the doctor has basically attacked those two Squid Game workers with like the triangle month and that very night itself like I'm also bringing especially since like according to my personal very impression I'm also bringing like among the great number of Squid Game workers that were present in that operation room like I'm also bringing especially so, like there were Squid Game workers the Squid Game workers who had scanned like the number 29 Squid Game worker Jun-ho like basically him basically doing the whole scanning and still lying about like the scan result like showing that like number 29 is like an infiltrator and that coupled with like the other Squid Game worker post like right now with Janko with like the whole organ transportation and everything like him too like being like the Squid Game would be definitely the Squid Game worker who did like the whole mob squad and everything like definitely precisely because of what the that got to my personal immunity, there will be that split among those two game workers in that precise operation room, where like the majority of like those two game workers would be of like the goal of like not wanting to like continue like the organ trading, but like instead like for them to like steal all that money in like the piggy bank. I'm considering precisely because of this reason I'm considering they would have like according to their like the majority of those workers like with the goal to like steal the money from like the piggy bank like they might have planned to like basically take out or take the life of those they might have already planned to take the life of those size two game workers with like the triangle mark in that operation. So on that area, and I definitely my personal chance to take their life and to take to have like two other people who will feel like totally aligning with their goal to like steal the money from like the piggy bank to that way make them infiltrate precisely by taking the life of the to gain workers with like the triangle mask and infiltrating like to make those two other allies that will be showing up on that very night on that very boat where like the whole organ trading would be like supposed to take place. Like they are in that board like like these are the two game workers might according to their strategy might have planned to like bring two people to like basically infiltrate as like it is in disguise as like the after taking the like of these two game workers that the trying not to make those two people who will be showing up through the board to like infiltrate into like this game building. So as like so that like they would be getting like two more like so that like they could get rid of those two to game workers with like the triangle mask to who would be like the only ones with like their priority and only goal would be to like make money of like the organ trading is definitely one of the 300 so that like their entire team of like that Squid Game workers like that portion of Squid Game workers would be having like that their common goal of like basically stealing like the money from like the piggy bank to be their plan. So like certainly because of this reason I'm preparing like right now with like that this to be a worker with like the circle mask right now pulling out this weapon like onto like Janko I'm different still I'm different like him revealing his plan to like Janko right now and him not attacking Janko at all and him revealing his plan to like Janko and like him protecting Janko that like Janko has no other choice but to help him and so like I'm bringing them totally right then like going up to like the boat and I'm going to bring at that point them like suppose there being like two people like according to the strategy two people from like that boat like showing up and basically like then bringing those two people stealthily through that there's a secret passageway for the VIPs to escape, like everything through that way, like them returning back to the operation room, and at that point, like them would be like seeing those two, one of like the triangle mask Squid Games worker, like after like the attack from like the doctor, like him badly in like a bad situation, like him, maybe like struggling to survive, and like the other Squid Game worker with like the triangle mask, like struggling to like help him recover, like basically, even though he's not a doctor, like so he's struggling to like help him recover, like that would be the situation. The like when like Jun-ho and like the other Squid Game workers, and like these two people with like their normal clothes, with like not them possibly not having like any wearing like the red Squid Game uniform. This two random people as well would be part of like the plan of like the Squid Game workers, like them showing up to that also. Like at that point, I was bring those two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask would be in like that operation room, seeing these two people with like normal clothes showing up, like at that point, them being totally shocked and confused actually like what's happening. So like right then itself, I'm between like those two people as well as like the other Squid Game worker was like the Sapo mask like straight away attacking and taking the life of those two Squid Game workers with like the triangle mask who would be like so they are like the operation. So like them dying and basically these two new infiltrators like taking up like the wearing like the costumes of like the red uniform of those and the triangle mask of close to dead Squid Game workers, like the scenario that I'm describing, and that those two dead Squid Game workers, like I'm describing, their bodies being secretly transported through that secret passageway through to that precise boat, like the scenario, and being transported and taken away through that boat is definitely also like a possible scenario that I'm only predicting. And my cognitive immersion. And that way, like two more, like other than Jun-ho, like that way, two more infiltrators uh, ending up happening into like Squid Game building. Like two new infiltrators, like with like the red uniform and triangle mark, like replacing the old, the actual original Squid Game versus like the triangle mark, with like the scenario that I'm going to bring. And this way, like totally favoring like the dog. Even after him having right now having like attack like those precise to Squid workers with like the triangle mark. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm going to something I'm about to remember. Okay, so like luckily my the reimbursement right now with like one of them goes to Squid workers with like the triangle mark right now chasing after like the dog. That's right now like the scenario to be like the doctor like he's totally that is the game worker catching up to like the doctor, and precisely as like he will be about to take the doctor's like when the like that says doctor somehow struggling his way into like eventually somehow being able to like work up. That's the game worker, and that doctor taking the life of that good game worker is like the scenario that I'm looking again. The doctor quickly that after taking the life of that good game worker, like the doctor quickly like infiltrating by into as like a good game worker by stealing his like red uniform. It's like the scenario that I'm looking right. So like the doctor being like right now being like the second infiltrator after like into like the red uniform as like a good game worker after Jun-ho is like the scenario that I'm looking and that was very structure. And at that point, I went to the represents that like at that point, like even though like the test to game occurs with like the square mask is doing like the CCTV monitoring in that particular area, he's also connected to the like for organ business and everything like basically it, even though I'm considering like him at that point like totally witnessing through the like CCTV that him totally witnessing like the doctor infiltration to like the red uniform as like a skill game or yet like I'm just working total on totally not all being able to like reveal it or talk about like reveal that to like any other skill game or even to like the front man precisely because of like him doing that will be like eventually getting him as well in trouble. So with that absolutely after then that the swing of but then score mark during that PPT mode. So like that way you'll be like knowing that about like the lot of infiltration as like a swing of things still have no other choice to like but remain keep silent. It's like the one possibility that I'm like for like the possibility is like the first person who's doing like the CCTV monitoring in that precise area was like that's the school game worker was like square mask like him totally being maybe being on the side allied to not like the precise game worker with like the triangle but mask, but like maybe him actually being allied to like the food game worker with like the with like those other Squid Game workers in that group, the majority of them who will be having their different goal of like stealing all the money from the big bank. So like maybe like even the Squid Game worker with like Square Master doing the monitoring as well will be on allied to them and not to like the Squid Game workers with like the final master definitely members. So like I'm wondering maybe like him being totally okay with like even after seeing like the doctor infiltrating, taking the life of that Sodium master of like the triangle master and infiltrating into that infiltrating as that Sodium worker. It's also like the other possible scenario that I'm going to run. Because like right now I would very much that like those precise two Sodium workers with like the triangle master. So these like seen as like an absolute like obstacle to that the like those remaining Sodium workers in their group with the different goals to steal all that money from like the big for them to like get rid of that. These two game workers with the triangle mask will be seen as like an obstacle is definitely I was very impression that I was sitting on. So like maybe the school game account like the square mask is connected to actually allied to and have the same goal to like steal the money from the biggie bank in being totally okay with like the death of and infiltration of like the doctor into that the death of the game worker with like the triangle mask and the infiltration of like the doctor. So like him so casually like once again like erasing away that those exact CCTV visuals and replacing it with like as usually like replacing it with like a fake CCTV visual. It's like also like the other scenario that I'm about to talk about. Also, according to my personal impression, like that's the reason for these two sets to game workers with like the triangle mask possibly being like an obstacle to like the remaining two game workers in their group. Like it would be most likely because like them might have initially started of like trying to like like the frontman and like the people running in this good game in trying to like make money, secretly make money by starting. They might have started it all off with like the secret of the trading thing, especially organ trading thing is definitely my presentation. But like as time progresses, like I'm referring the majority like their group might have had like might have decided for like more money and that would be that might have included resulted in like them thinking up the strategy to like stealthily steal all that money from like the last PG bank is definitely my preparation. But like I'm referring these two Squid Game and they might have talked about like changing up their strategy into like aiming even higher like and for this like Korean workers might have in the group might have discussed it among themselves just to attempt like the scaling of all that money from like the glass piggy banks like what might have happened in like a past system so like at that point that maybe these exercise to Korean workers with like the triangle mask might have thoroughly objected to like uh to that plan and also maybe like they might have said that like that's like too much of a risk and to basically aim to scale all the money from the last video and to escape like attempting that would be like too much of us. So like these two video workers with like the triangle map alone might be like the only studio workers in their group that might have thoroughly objected to it. Like, so like from that day on like I'm considering like by the remaining members in their group like of studio workers in their group like they might have all seen these two specific these two sodium workers with like a triangle mask alone as like obstacles that they need to like literally get rid of. Just definitely my book forever. So like this like how like the reason for like my percentage impression. Okay, so like definitely my percentage impression right now is that like that says the game of murder like the Satya Master right now won't be lying to like Jun-ho about like basically that zombie cat with like a single kidney being a girl is definitely my percentage impression. He will be like saying the truth. It's definitely my percentage impression. So definitely my percentage impression that like Jun-ho brother would be like actually alive and would be present as one of like the studio candidates. Definitely never very much. Even at this point, it's definitely never been very much. So like I'm just bring that even though recently Jungkook had entered like into the guys had basically entered into like the roles are like all the skill game candidates who are like still even during them like obviously Jungkook might also frantically among like the skill game candidates might have looked around like exist around looking at each and every single shooting candidates and frantically might have first to see if like he can find his brother and he amongst them, but like he definitely didn't find his brother. It's definitely my best friend. Might have definitely been what might have happened. It's definitely my situation. But my personal impression is that like since like the situation in which like Janko have entered into like the role of like the shooting candidates was perfectly during while like the whole special Squid game had been taking place, and since it was like all that chaos that was happening in that Squid game candidate room, I'm wondering like what might have happened would be like Jun-ho's brother might have been so extremely scared that like he might have hidden himself underneath some bed. Is definitely my personal reaction. In that room underneath some bed is definitely my personal reaction. Like even after like all the studio workers had showed up and stopped like the special studio, and even then I was wondering like Jun-ho's brother might have been so extremely scared and maybe traumatized that like he might have been still keeping on hiding there under that bed. Definitely my personal reaction. So this might be like the sole reason for like Jun-ho not being able to like spot his brother among those civilian candidates at that point. Is definitely my personal impression. So definitely like my personal impression is definitely that like so while Jun-ho had basically sent the message to like most likely it's like one of like the officer in the station when like he met out Jun-ho might have only informed just to him like there will be that one single officer in the station like whom Jun-ho might be the closest with and whom Jun-ho might have felt that like might be like the only person who would be able to like believe Jun-ho the example for station as to like the what like Sangyeon had basically told in like the station like all being like a possibility and like the fact that Jungho was like heading off to like infiltrate into like to find out the truth behind it like for this like Jungho might have been message to that single police officer before Jungho might have followed like the van that took Sangyeon to like the civilian building is definitely my Bulgari impression. So like I was wondering, like in that message that Shampoo from like the Stygian building had sent, it will be precisely to this exact police officer respectively my position. And in that since in that message like Shampoo had typed out the words of like chaos and all the things that happened that day. And since like so let's like along with all those words that Janko had sent to like that police officer, he had also sent the word that like my brother, like I'm remembering that Janko might have what Janko might have been trying to communicate to that officer through that word in the message like of my brother will be precisely maybe that like Janko strongly believes that what Janko might have been trying to communicate to be that like he strongly believes that his brother is present in like that game building. It's definitely my rather than like him having found his brother in like to game building. It's definitely my personal impression right now. Also, definitely my personal impression right now is for like Janko's brother to like eventually end up being part of like Sangyeon's team is like the scenario where I'm developing and then the only putting eventually towards right now point of the revolution like eventually towards like the very end like parang Janfo like dying while protecting the product. It's definitely my personal impression. Like like Janfo's product would be like eventually towards the very end the most like to survive but like uh, to like ensure that happens like eventually towards the end like Janfo would be like would be ending up time to protect his brother. It was like the very end, like the scenario that I'm going to free and not the frame. So like the cinema version right now is that basically right now with like the frontman right now taking the life of like that said the game of the like the right now after he has taken off his mask like I'm wondering the precise reason for like the frontman so quickly showing up would be precisely because of like precisely the doctor as well as that game worker like right now being present in the process in the process good game who will be like the process reason for that is definitely going to the because like there will be like a different set of a whole section of like CCTV monitoring and not just that single persons. It's like the square mask so it's the gamer current like square mask alone won't be like having access to the monitoring of like the main Squid Game who where like Squid Game is taking place. So definitely so that room would be monitored by a lot of different other Squid Game workers. Is definitely my preference. So like quickly like the they might have all collectively quickly spotted like the search stopper showing up to that Squid Game in like the middle of the night, and they went straight away reported to like the front man quickly showing up and taking the life of that Squid Game worker. Might have been what might have happened right now is definitely my good so like definitely my good representation right now that like either already like the Squid Game I'm considering like right now like the Squid Game worker with like the square mask might have definitely who was doing like the monitoring while precisely the doctor was like steadily leading to that operation room and doing like the operating procedure and everything like that. Besides, Squid Game worker who was erasing like the CCTV footage, like that's Squid Game worker like Squad Mask. I'm considering right now he might have definitely known that, but like I'm considering without much delay at all, he's going to die. The front man will be taking his life with like the scenario that I'm considering. So, and also right now I'm considering the front man right now with like taking the life of that this Squid Game worker in the Squid Game role like that the Squid Game worker is like right now having his life taken by the front man. I'm considering yet like the front man right now not taking the life of like the Squid Game candidate like of the doctor like the scenario that I'm considering. I'm considering like the still going to survive. And like the first reason would be like right now it's like the front man would be like it will be extremely important for and like the top priority for like the front man right now to like find out after like how exactly this one single studio candidate have made it out of like the studio candidate room and made it into this game room in like the middle of the night. How exactly this happened? Like this like the front man to find out how this happened will be the ultimate priority of like front man right now. Especially when the so like especially because of this reason like for like the front man like and about the like the front man might be also think that basically CCTV footages might have definitely been erased. Like definitely there will be a traitor among like the people like monitoring like the CCTV footage and hence why like basically only one like the this game candidate had made it to like this like Squid Game room alone like all the other Squid Game workers like doing like the CCTV monitoring was like had even found this game candidate precisely because of like there being like traitor among like the Squid Game workers who are doing like the CCTV monitoring. Maybe also like along the lines like the front manager right now thinking it's definitely my preference principle. Like interrogation would be absolutely an extremely high priority for like the front man right now. It's definitely my preference. Interrogation of the doctor is definitely my preference. Like I'm saying, right now the front man like interrogating the doctor and I'm preferring the doctor like without not even bothering to like basically keep anything from like the front man like like the doctor would be totally and absolutely scared and the doctor straight away revealing everything about like the secret organ selling thing going on in like the Squid building and all that. So like at that point, still I'm considering like the front man still after gaining all that information out of like the doctor, still I'm considering the front man now taking the life of like the doctor and like I was considering like the front man with this like team like usually team of Squid Game workers quickly rushing to like that precise uh, room where like the operation was done and I was considering like they are like maybe like then also possibly taking like bringing like the doctor as well to that room and I was considering they are like I'm considering like the front man noticing like the body of like the other studio worker with like the triangle mask there. And I'm also bring like at that point I'm also bring like seeing all this and I'm also bring like the front man deciding to like maybe like seal that room where like that whole operation was all done like I'm also bring maybe like the front man deciding to like seal away that room. And I'm also bring like the front man then like basically deciding to like also not take the life of the doctor, like the frontman totally taking the doctor to game worker and taking him back to like the precise Squid Game room. It's definitely also my personal impression. So like I was wondering maybe like even during that information maybe like like the doctor would be like totally maybe even like be attacked by like the frontman and that way like the doctor will be forced to like also reveal about like him getting information about like the upcoming games beforehand and all that like frontman might have already even right now would have like that suspicion right now and kept that even that information from like the from like this game workers will be precisely because of that suspicion that like right now the frontman will be having precisely after seeing like the performance of like how like the Squid Game candidates had created a team of like all men for like the right before like the tug of war to game even began like all that like I'm considering like so precisely because of reason I'm considering the front man even questioning the doctor about like the whether he knew about like Squid Games beforehand and all that like basically and like the doctor like eventually having to like reveal all that to like the front man as well and say the book as well as like the scenario that I was bring. So like I was bringing without all the after all this information, I was bringing the front man totally still deciding to like not take the like the doctor and I was bringing like front man getting the doctor to gain candidate, putting the doctor to gain candidate back to like the former all the remaining to gain candidate would be like the scenario that I was bringing. And definitely my birthday impression that I was sitting on to that like the whole Squid Game, yeah, like glass piggy bank, but like all the money would be like the money of like the persons running like the Squid Game. It's definitely the billionaire that would be running like the Squid Game. So his money that would be like put into all that in, as like the money in like the glass piggy bank is definitely one of the revenge. So like he might have definitely have like while running that Squid Game, it would be just like his personal revenge on like Sango San Dion, as well as like the old man with dementia for like the times he had lost to them, like for all the great number of times he had always lost to them during the, back when he was a child and had played like his childhood experience with them as definitely memorable. Maybe him as well as like his father as well would have like similarly only lost each and every single time he might have played like all sorts of like childhood games against like the Orlando Trinity as well. It's definitely one of the very impressive. So like it would be a collective possible father son taking out their revenge on like Sangu, Sangion, as well as the Orman with dementia, would be what right now happening through like this game is definitely my good friends. And all the other candidates of like this game would be like would be just part of like the trap set for like some just specifically Sangu, Sangion, as well as like Dolman with image, and that would be the precise reason for like the Squid Games having like connection to like the childhood memories and the younger day memories of like Dolman with image as well as like Sangu and Sangion. It's definitely my good impression. So definitely. Uh, so like the person, the billionaire who would be running like Squid Game would be having like absolutely no intention at all to like basically give away the even if like in to give away all that huge quantity of money in like the glass piggy bank. Like he definitely would be having like absolutely no intention at all of giving that money away. Like it would be just like his like desire to get that ultimate revenge on Sango Sangion and the old man with dementia. While at the same time, like he would be like such a sadistic villain, or like he would be like enjoying like basically like tricking all of the Squid candidates and tempting them with like all that huge amount of money in like the glass piggy bank. While like the Squid Games would be set up in such a manner to ensure that basically absolutely no one survives like Squid Game and wins like the Squid Game and to be able to like get all the money in like the glass piggy bank. Like to be in such a manner like the Squid Games would be set is definitely my good trainer. So like precisely because of this reason and this would be one thing like the front man as well will be well and fully aware of. So also definitely my good trainer. So like I'm preferring also the possibility that like maybe like I'm considering like maybe most likely like maybe like the front man might be like the son of like the billionaire that will be running like the studio. And it's also like about that and like anyway like that number like the front man would be like benevolently aware that basically absolutely none of like the candidates that are participating in like the studio would be getting all that money who is quantity of money like the glass would be getting like any not only would be getting any of like the money like huge quantity of money like the glass piggy bank, but also that like each and every single one of like the Indian candidate won't be like making it to like the sixth round, will be completing like the sixth, would be each and every single candidate would dying before being able to like complete like the sixth, before being able to complete and survive like the sixth Indian would be also one thing maybe that I'm also bring like the government as well would be like when fully aware of. So like this and solely due to this reason, I'm also looking the possibility of like right now even after like the doctor having seen like the face of one of like the Sugian workers and the different like the frontman not taking the light of that of like the doctor is also like definitely possibility that I'm considering and like the doctor being returned back to like the room where like all the remaining speaking and it is okay. So also definitely my consideration and I'm considering it might have definitely been also might have been like the very same situation with like the previous student candidate who had made like one of like the student workers as like a hostage and basically had who had even unmatched like basically one of those student workers like basically back then as well, like the frontman had only taken the life of that precise good game worker. And since like during that incident as well, it was like since it was like the Squid Game candidate like taking his own life, like I was thinking like if he hadn't done that, like I was thinking like the frontman might have not taken like the life of like that precise Squid Game candidate is also definitely might have definitely taken the life of that Squid Game candidate, but like it would, the sole reason for like the frontman was even doing that would be solely due to like him having lost that Squid Game alone. Is definitely my preference. So like since like currently like in like the current situation of like the doctor, since like the doctor have won like the Squid Games up until this point, and those are like the frontman not taking the life of like the doctor right now is like the scenario that I'm referring and not the research. So like the later the what is my personal impression and the different like the format without they can interrogate like the doctor and the film like the doctor revealing everything about like the organ transportation and everything. So about the like definitely the frontman sending a bunch of civilian workers to like the beaches to like patrol and stuff all around like the beaches to see like any stadium they can find any stadium worker like transporting doing the organ transportation or everything like or like any boat showing up or like in like a similar it's like the scenario that I'm also trying. So like I'm also trying like certainly the Squid Game workers right then like getting discussing throughout like the entirety of like the beaches of like the Squid Game Island and like them spotting like the boat in like one of like the shorelines and I'm also trying like them the Squid Game workers showing up there and maybe like the Squid Game workers like taking the life of like all the people who would be present in that boat as well. Also like a possibility that I'm looking for. And then like I'm observing so like the boat that way would be present in the on the shorelines of like the Squid Game island, just like the scenario that I'm looking for. So from that day on, like the boat would be always present in that shoreline of like the Squid Game island is like the scenario that I'm looking for. And like the boat getting tied to like the shorelines of like the Squid Game island is like the scenario that I'm looking. And then I'm looking for like definitely through like the confession of like the doctor through during like the interrogation and during like doctor revealing that it wasn't just like the just two studio workers, but that there were like way more number of like studio workers like along with like during like the procedure of like organ transportation and operation and everything. So we also like what like the doctor would be revealing to like the frontman at during the interrogations and also the criminal trial. So like I was wondering why all this would be happening like I was wondering like by then like I'm about to bring Jun-ho as well as like the other civilian worker would be like by then would be like realizing that basically that therefore a secret organ transportation thing has been gotten exposed and basically that like the front man is aware of it and like the remaining civilian workers by now like only aware of it and something all throughout like this would be like found out by like precisely like Jun-ho and other civilian workers like the scenario that I'm referring. But like definitely at that point, I was wondering like the other Korean worker feeling as like it's like totally game over for him, and like he would like all he would want to do at that point would be just to like escape from like this game island and make it back to the city. But like I was wondering Jung-ho and definitely not letting him go, and I was wondering Jung-ho threatening him and forcefully making him team up with like Jung-ho to like especially with like Jung-ho would be like absolutely determined to like basically not only save his brother but also to like bring down like the people running like the city. So like with that determination I'm going to bring Jung-ho once again deciding to like return back to like the infiltrate back stealthily into like the community and as to like how exactly Jung-ho would be doing that I'm going to bring Jung-ho maybe like through that secret passageway like I'm going to bring Jung-ho would be like literally passing back entering back in through that secret passageway and I'm going to bring even though by then like I'm going to bring even though that store through that operation group like would be sealed away by most likely the frontman like another still like Janko like totally Janko and along with that other Korean worker like when them figuring out like the ventilation kind of like a passageway that through which like considering like clearly like exactly like how uh Soviet had basically like converted into like the ventilation like passageway from like the bathroom area like I'm considering like that way through like a similar manner I'm considering the really like that size passageway for like the VIP to like escape like climbing back in through that passageway like I'm considering Janko as well as the other civilian worker figuring out like a similar like a passageway leading to like the ventilation in like the ceiling. So like I'm going through that manner, like through that path, I'm going like jump as well as the other student worker, like infiltrating back into like the student building. It's like the scenario that I'm going and I'm going like them like still having like their Squid Game uniform, and them considering like them most likely taking out like the most likely taking out like to the life of like two other Squid Game workers, and that way like then once again infiltrating back in as like an active Squid Game worker. And it's like limited scenario, and that way like Jun-ho proceeding with his like plans and goals to like eventually like save his like brother, find and save his brother, as well as like bring down the people running like the studio as well, and put an end to like the studio and everything. So like limited scenario that I'm again to render. So like definitely my I'm concerned right now as for like the frontman dialogue right now before taking the life of like the skill game worker, and before like the outcasters, like the frontman's dialogue right now as for like how much like he wants like the skill game to be a fair game, and like as to like how the frontman kind of talk in an empathetic manner towards like the skill game candidates as to like them that having faced like unfairness in like the real world, and to give them a fair chance, and all that would be totally and absolutely a lie. It's definitely my personal reaction. Like definitely the Squid Game, like the frontman would be like all those dialogues of like the frontman will be precisely intended to like correct all the remaining Squid Game workers present there. It's definitely my personal reaction. It's thinking that basically like all the front everything the frontman is saying is actually true, and to that it's definitely my good impression. Precisely like the actual reality of the situation would be definitely like my good impression that has to be on to that basically the Squid Games would be like already set up, and it would be like set up in such a manner that basically absolutely none of like the Squid Game candidates will be able to like win like the sixth Squid Game and survive like the sixth Squid Game. It's definitely my good impression. So that even while the frontman says of this dialogues like I will bring the frontman as well, last like the person running like this to game as well, you'll be well and fully aware. And I'm also still sticking to my impression of like the serious possibility of like the frontman being like the son of like the person running like this game, and then both would be well and fully aware that basically absolutely none of like the Squid Game candidates would be like ever surviving or winning like the Squid Game. Squid Game is definitely my impression, and definitely like the like a conscious manner like the front man as well as like the person running this game would be like tempting all the game candidates with like all this huge quantity of like money in like the last PV like to like only tempt them into like that way and put all the great number of game candidates into this like going through extreme suffering process of like playing like such good game, which would be like eventually yielding like absolutely benefits or results to like each of like this game candidates other than like suffering death. Like it would be like the fact that like suffering death would be like the only thing that will be like in dying in wait for each and every single game candidate before reaching like the uh before like until like all the way until like the sixth game would be one thing the frontman as well as like the person running the game would be well and fully aware of, and like get to like totally trick, and like it would be like a conscious like tricking of like the Squid Game workers that would be happening right now. But like the dialogue of like the frontman, which like him trying to put he would be like most likely right now trying to put on a fake that absolutely character like to make like all of like the Squid Game workers into like think that like this is like so like passionate about like the Squid Game being so extremely fair, and this like a fair chance. If them giving a fair chance to like all the Squid Game candidates and everything, it's definitely my positive impression. Okay, so like the film I was very impression right now was like Jun-ho breaking into the frontman's room, and like even though like the frontman heard the sound, like I'm assuming since it was like frontman alone that heard the sound, like I'm assuming maybe like the frontman or confidently thinking right now that basically maybe it's all in like the frontman's head, and what he had he think he had heard might be like maybe just it's all in his head, precisely because like the frontman would be totally overconfidently thinking that basically absolutely no one would be like regardless of what like any school game worker would be or like candidate would be trying like still like none of like the school game candidates or workers won't be like able to or like won't be able to even make it to like the frontman's place like frontman's room would be like along the lines of like overconfidence that frontman would be having. Like in the case of like the candidates, like the frontman would be maybe overconfident think that like they won't uh, be able to even find like the frontman's room because that would be like how, or like even enter into like the front room, because like that would be uh, how tightly sealed, or like the security in which like how tightly like the door to like the room would be like securely sealed. It's also like remember the everything. And like the frontman would be, in the case of like the workshop, like the frontman would be having that absolute of confidence that is not even a single studio worker would be that they actually daring or like even have the courage to like infiltrate into like the frontman role, would be along the lines of that absolute or confidence that the frontman would be right now having. So like this would be the precise reason for like right now, because like the frontman would be all confident thing that like that noise that he has sound that he has heard right now might have been all in that, might be just the feeling and might be all in his head. Would be along the lines of the front man with the thing was definitely member the remote. So like, that would be sort of for like the front man right now heading over to the precise operation room instead, even after having heard that sound. It's definitely member the remote. So, uh, definitely the scenario that I'm interpreting right now with like Jun-ho entering like the front man's room definitely would be like Jun-ho right now. I'm considering like right now coincidentally I'm considering there would be a phone call into like the front man's room, and like that would be precisely from the boss, the billionaire who would be like running like the game, the billionaire to whom like all that money in like the last figure bank would be belong to. That's like one possibility that I'm considering, or like the other possibility that I'm considering is like all that huge quantity of money, like the glass piggy bank won't be like a real money. That's like also like it might only appear as if like it's real money. So that's like the other possibility that I'm considering. So like that way, like the frontman and like the person running the studio would be like only tricking like all the studio candidates in such a manner, and basically claiming would be totally like putting on their fake act, like the frontman would be totally putting on his fake act in front of like all the remaining studio workers, and like and the candidates as of like the Squid Game is intended to give all these like for Squid Game candidates a fair chance to like make it in like the real world and everything. It's definitely my environment. So like right now that whole thing to get exposed, like that whole to get exposed to solely to Jun-ho right now. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like right now it's like Jun-ho will be like exploring like the romance bring like the phone or like the telephone to like ring in like the romance romance like I'm going to bring like Jun-ho usually picking up the phone, and I'm also bring Jun-ho to like not say anything at all. And I'm also bring Jun-ho, like the less Jun-ho will be picking up the phone, like I'm also bring like it will be like the boss, like the person running like the stadium, that billionaire I'm also bring him to like speak. And I was wearing like Jun-ho totally like without saying a word, like Jun-ho will be like patiently listening to like everything he has to say. So like I'm also bring like through in that whole dialogue, whatever that like the billionaire that will be running the studio would be saying, like I'm also through that dialogue, like the Janko realizing that how extremely rich the Squid Game is, and like how much like the Squid Game is like absolutely like such an ultimate trap, and like it's like such not only such an ultimate trap, but like basically it's like tempting like all this like the Squid Game is actually like trapping like all these Squid Game candidates and tempting them with like the huge quantity of money which like they would never be able to like achieve or get solely due to like the game being like rigged, and to ensure that absolutely no one survives in like the six Squid Game. It's definitely like just critical information like I'm looking for right now to find out through like that phone call that will be happening right now. Like is in like the frontman's room is like the scenario that I'm considering. So Janko would be like finding this out as like right now it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And from that point on, like I'm doing Janko will be like desperate. Like until that point, like even Janko wouldn't be confident that basically if Janko, even though Janko badly want to like get all the candidates in like such an extremely dangerous Squid Game out of like the Squid Game island, and basically save them. Even though Chan-ho would badly want to like save them, that Chan-ho would be also aware that basically even if Chan-ho tries to like attempt such a thing, like even the candidates won't be like willing to like escape like this Squid Game island solely because of like them being so extremely tempted by all that huge quantity of money in like the glass engine, and would be one thing Janko would be absolutely aware of. But like I'm looking right now, Janko being like the first person to like find out that basically like the Squid Game is like an actual trap, and none of these Squid Game candidates are ever going to get their hand on that all that huge quantity of money, and going to eventually end up sufferingly dying without being able to complete it was survive like good game. And I was wondering like Jun-ho realizing this and that like Jun-ho totally realizing how extremely it's important to like basically to save all those like Squid Game candidates who are going to eventually end up dying, suffering and dying who are being tricked, like basically to like make them realize and basically to save them from like this to game building, like how extremely important it is. Like was for example at that point realizing. So like from that point on, was the Janford starts to like basically uh, get like aware like on Squid Game candidates, but like I was doing Janford as well be confused as like how he would be like even if he's Janford the only thing along the lines of like even if he tells that this crucial information to like the no matter how stealthily he gets this crucial information to like this game and if they won't be trusting or believing Janko at all. Maybe along the lines Janko would be thinking at that point. But then I'm assuming Janko thinking of San Gion. Janko would be totally feeling after that Janko ordering having talked to like Sangyon even before entering like the studio. Like so like from that even tiny bit of like an interaction, especially since like Janko having even seen like Sangyon complain to like the police station before entering like the second second for like the second time. I was wondering like Janko would be having that absolute trust and hope in like Sangyon alone that basically Sangyon would be like that only Squid that single only Squid candidate that might actually believe Janko, that might actually be able to like believe Janko that basically the Squid Game was like absolutely fake and it's like a trap where like absolutely no one would be winning and everyone would be ending up dying or suffering that uh, and no one will be getting like the money and all that. Like so, like I'm going to bring like from that point on, I'm going to bring like and I'm going to bring without much great delay like after like the phone call, like I'm going to bring uh like the boss, like the billionaire would be saying all this to like to through the phone, thinking that like he's talking to like the con man, but like I'm going to bring after a while, like I'm going to bring the billionaire running like this game realizing that like there's no response from like the other side. So like I'm going to bring at that point like the boss asking through the phone as to like who am I talking to? That would be along the lines he would ask. So like at that point I'm wondering like maybe like a jump of like saying some dialogue back to like the boss billionaire would be like running with this to him as if he like he would be bringing you all down and bringing you all to like justice and ensuring that you would all be getting punished like either along such lines like Jun-ho saying back and talking back and threatening back the billionaire who's like running like the studio and hanging up the phone. That's like one scenario that I'm doing. The other scenario is basically for Janko at that point to like not say a single word and after realizing the truth about like studio, like Janko straight away hanging up the phone. It's like the scenario that I was suffering. And that way, like at that point, like the boss who would have spoken through like the phone, like him generally feeling as like basically like someone other than the front man has heard all this like basically, and that someone possibly having like in it's like my secondary impression. So like considering at that point itself that much created at all at that point itself when considering maybe like Junko would be like hanging up the phone at that point itself like the front man will be returning back to his room like the scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point itself like Junko would be like frantically thinking of looking for like a way to escape. And I'm looking at that point, two scenarios of like a possible scenario as to like how exactly Janko would be like escaping like the room of like the front man at that point. Before like the front man would be entering the room, and the second would be either through the very same passageway that like Janko had showed up, infiltrated into like the front man's room, or like the other way of like escape would be like maybe there would be that precise like ventilation aircraft airway like in like one corner or like one area of like the front room. There will be that like in the ceiling there will be that opening. There will be that door through which like there will be that hole through which like jump will be able to like enter into that whole absolute huge network of like that ventilation airway on the ceiling. So like maybe through that path like I'm jump basically from like the front man from like escaping and like creeping back into like deep into like the studio building. It's like the scenario that I'm referring and Janko deciding to that basically with that Janko at that point having that ultimate two goals, not just like saving his brother and bringing down the stick game, but like even before that for him to like also like bring awareness to like all the Indian candidates who are like going through all this extreme sufferings and putting their life on the line just for like huge quantity of like money in like the glass piggy bank, and yet like the fact that they are being tricked and cheated, like basically to bring awareness to all of them, like basically that will be one other goal at that point, that like because it's really important and crucial goal at that point, that like I'm considering like Jun-ho will be having like the scenario, critical scenario that I'm considering another brain. Okay, so like the future is very ambition right now is like Jun-ho right now finding like a whole library of like multiple books containing list of players of attended like this from 1999 to like 2020, like I'm thinking so. The Squid Games might have been taking place like these entire 4 years, like so like the person running like stadium for billionaire, like I'm considering like this he had been like running like this stadium since 1999. I'm considering like that billionaire who they are running like this stadium might have been definitely the childhood friend of like not Sang-woo Sang-yeon and like but like about Prince, he might have been definitely wasn't running a good game. Like the billionaire, that billionaire would be like actually like the childhood friend of like the old man with like dementia, like Sang-yeon's father, Stephanie Member for Emerson. Like he might have been like childhood friend of Sang-yeon's father, Stephanie Member for Emerson, and his son, like the front man, like his son might have been definitely be like the front man, and the front man might have been definitely like one of those childhood friends of that Sang-woo and Sang-yeon who might have always lost back then, who might have always kept on losing in like childhood experience whenever they play this definitely members. So like I'm remembering and like my personal impression is that like this person who's like right now running like this video, like he might have been back then even while like he had like basically uh, so like the person like the millionaire running this game back then, like he might have that absolute grudge and jealousy and like absolute desire to like get revenge on like the old man with dementia. And I'm wondering when eventually he might have had that son, like basically he might have brought his son to like same playground where like the old man with dementia, his son like son Young was like playing like the childhood game as well. So like and then like he might have been like filled with that absolute fury and grudge towards like not just like the old man of Pinocchio, but also towards like Sang as well as Sang as he saw like basically his son, the old man of Pinocchio, his son like Sang was always like the when he saw like the history repeating itself was like exactly like he would like never repeat like the old man of Pinocchio back when like back during the past, like no matter whatever childhood games or like even like the tug of war that they might have like the non-serious the tug of war like they might have played back in like the past, like while he might have always lost to like the online Valencia back then, like I'm wondering like the same thing happening with like his son as well, always losing to like the son of like the old man Valencia, like San Leon as well. So like I'm wondering since then like he might have had that absolute grudge, and I'm wondering like he might have totally like by then like he might have been in like the process of like then he might have like decided to like basically get revenge, that absolute revenge on like Sang-yeon, the old man with dementia as well as Sang-yeon and Sang-woo and all of them is definitely my remember. So like he might have since then might have been like planning on like creating this like ultimate range of like Squid Game, like in which like absolutely no one would be able to like win to set up and create such a Squid Game where like absolutely no one would be able to like win it, and basically to basically like trick all the candidates into like going through all that suffering only to like eventually end up dying without being able to like win like the Squid Game while being like consistently being tricked by like the huge sum of money like the last piggy bank might have been what like his plan might have been, and he might have been executing that his plan since like 1999 to second those things. So like I'm just saying like he might have been executing it since like 1999 and might have been gaining all that experience. So that like eventually that he could have he could like basically set up like the perfect Squid Game. Like and I'm considering during this entire time from 1999 he might have been also putting in his from his side. He might have been also putting in like the his effort to like sidetrack and to destroy like the life of like Sang and Sang-yeon as well as like the old man with dementia actually like ensure that them eventually the three of them eventually are in that absolute extreme depth of like a situation where like they could be like that way you are going to like falling into the trap of the Christian. It's definitely not those reversion. So like and if you way back then he might have been while all the games might have been taking place from 1999 on the other he might have been on the silent who might have been also constantly trying to destroy the lives of Sangu Sangion as well as government and Muslims and he might have been only succeeded in luring Sangu Sangion and government Muslims into the trap of the Squid Game. Certainly by 2020, certainly my good remember. So I'm remembering until then he might have been only he might have only been so until then I'm remembering that sadistic and villanistic billionaire who he might have been from 1999 and running the Squid Game and with his mind filled with that absolute grudge towards Sangu Sangyeon and he was getting revenge on Sangu Sangyeon and the government and until then he might have wanted to witness the suffering that villains he might have wanted to witness suffering that of all the people having their hopes shattered and suffering and dying from 1999 to and with each year we might have been conducting a food game each year and remembering each year we might have been filled with more and more of that grudge and revenge of and that hope of eventually the things we each year all the great number of food game candidates meeting their suffering and him eventually filled with that absolute grudge of eventually being able to see his ultimate that first people that he wants to get that ultimate revenge against Sangion and Goldman swing dementia as well eventually dying in such a manner. So that when I'm considering right now definitely my preference is this food game might have been conducted without the person running this food game or the people behind the Squid Game none of them getting exposed or the Squid Game the running of the Squid Game being any trouble happening to interruptions happening to the running of the studio and the might have definitely not about happened for the entirety of the past years from 1999 to 2020. So the studio game might have been conducted by the person running with the winner running with studio game might have ran the studio game from 1999 to 2020 each and every single year. It's definitely of the membership. So I was thinking right now as Jun-ho would be inspecting and going through the list of players from 1999 to 2020, what he will be shockingly finding out and discovering will be that from 1999 to 2020, each and every single player that list of from the list of players, each and every single player that had attended the game that had played this game from 1999 to 2020 have all ended up dying. Not even a single person have survived this game. That is what I'm looking for right now for Jun-ho to shocking it definitely never impression. So definitely also with the frontman having even earlier given the order to precisely monitor those people who after their recently after their first good game with of the red line green line with Sangi or after the after good game those few good game candidates who didn't return back to play to attend this good game again basically man even giving the order to specially monitor them to be precisely to with the intent to destroy their life even more so that eventually they will be feeling as if they have no other option but to once again return back to the game. So to ensure that they return back to each and every single player return back to the studio would be the stress reason for him the government having given the order to monitor those few studio candidates who didn't return back to the studio after the red light green light studio is definitely my question. So this is what I'm considering right now for Jun-ho to shockingly discover that absolutely no one from 1999 have ever won or even survived the Squid Game since 1999. This is what I'm considering right now, Jun-ho to shockingly discover. And I'm considering in the list of the Squid Game candidates in 2020, I'm considering as Jun-ho right now would be going through the list. I'm considering Jun-ho seeing that I'm considering among the Squid list of Squid Game candidates in 2020, the ones that have would be TikTok is definitely my that book is definitely my favorite. So Jun-ho while he will be going through that list, he will be having that absolute panicking kind of a feeling, and he will be scared to see if his brother's photo will be present in that list of players who had already died in the Squid Game of 2020. But I'm also him him having that absolute relief as he will be finding his brothers, like neither his name nor photo being present in like the list of Squid Game candidates that have already died. So like I'm considering then he's checking the section of like the Squid Game candidates of like the players in like 2020 who are still alive. And in that like I'm considering only finding his brother. It's like the scenario that I was doing. And at that point I was considering like Jun-ho feeling that absolute feeling of relief. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point like Jun-ho like having that ultimate crucial feeling that basically that as soon as possible he needs to like let not only save his brother but like also like all the remaining Squid Game candidates who are totally unaware that like Squid Game is like such an extreme unfair trap, death trap to basically to make them aware and to save them and get them out of like the Squid Game island and get them back to the city with that ultimate goal and intent like I'm considering like Jungho from that point on, like to hear escaping before like the frontman will be getting back to like his room. And I was wondering like right now, it's like the frontman right now with him having order like his remaining studio workers like and having sent off like the emergency alarm and everything like that would be definitely meant for like the entirety of like the studio workers in the entirety of the studio building to like go through and check through the entirety of like the studio building for like an intruder or something. It's like definitely what that emergency siren allow would be meant for subliminal premise. So like while all this will be happening, I'm also thinking right now for like the format to like to clearly remember like him hearing that noise coming from like the direction of his room. It's like the scenario that I'm also thinking. So like the front man quickly remembering that and basically right now I'm also thinking the front man quickly but himself like mostly rushing towards like his room but like especially as like he'll be like hurriedly trying to open the door to his room and was right and by the time he would be entering into his room and was definitely Janso would have only escaped into like either like the ventilation air pipeline or like to somewhere else through that precise path through which like he had entered into like the front room like I'm through that very same path like I'm like him like discovering a different pathway to like somewhere else in like to a different area within like the city building and that way like through that path like Junko succeeding in like escaping temporarily for like the time being and still being present while still being present within like the city building is like the scenario that I'm also bringing in my impression right now. And also the film was very impressive. The film that like with the current siren and alarm and everything, like still like the frontman right now, he just attempt won't be able to like find it, like that single one number 29 infiltrator. It's definitely my very much and I'm considering definitely for like eventually I'm considering definitely like Janko taking the life of another civilian worker and I'm considering like Janko once again infiltrating back as like a Squid Game worker, like showing up once again within like the studio building and like showing like the whole work of like the studio workers as like not number 29 but like as like a different number studio worker. It's definitely my favorite and that way like once again like Janko freaking like the front man and everyone and I'm also trying like the front man being like more and more frustrated with like him the more days passes he won't be able to like the more time passes he won't be able to like find out home like product it's like I was bringing the front man being that much more frustrated. It's like bringing the scenario that I was bringing on the ring. Because like the thing is very interesting right now. I've got like Jun-ho brother like Jun-ho being like the winner of like the games in 2015. Like I'm also something what might have happened would be like right now I was impression that like Jun-ho might have actually won and made all that money from winning that the 2015 Squid Game. But like I was wondering exactly what might have happened would be like exactly like how like the Squid Games, the games in like the Squid Games have like direct connection to like the childhood of like Sangyo as well as like the old man with him and definitely I'm preferring so definitely with like Sangyo and like having like a proper job in like the past which he had maintained for like I think like a decade which he had suddenly lost at a certain point. And with like even Sangyo's life as well, career as well, like basically looking good, but like after a certain point, like basically like Sangwoo as well, like ending up being extremely adaptable and like I'm thinking like these would all be like definitely like that's the reason for like Sangwoo Sangyeon as well as like the old man like Sangwoo and Sangyeon like them ending up that career and like and Sangyeon like usually falling into like the habit of like making a lot of betting and everything like definitely the factor might have been definitely like the person running like this game might have been definitely the factor for like Sangyeon losing his job and everything basically even Sang was well ending up so extremely desperate and certainly my best. So like the person running this game would be such a billionaire who would have like all sorts of people on his side to like basically ensure that like he could like destroy another person's life and basically like lure them into falling into the trap of this game. It's definitely one of the rememberation. So like I was saying, every year whenever there's like with like the list of winners right now being found by Jun-ho, and but right now my impression is that like every year there might definitely end up being like a winner that might have actually been end up becoming like the it would be like a winner every year in like the Squid Game since like 99 and they would have gained all that money but like what like this person running like the Squid Game like him that is like extreme influence and power and it's like what he might have done might have been like with him having all this like he might have like the person running the Squid Game would be having all these people by his side so some like they might have second like how he might have destroyed like the life of like Sang-yeon, Sang-woo, and the girl man Denuncia into luring them into like falling into the trap of the Squid Game. But so, like, even like the winners of like the Squid Game will be targeted each year by this precise winner running like the Squid Game to ensure that basically them as well like eventually end up like their lives as well they end up getting destroyed even with like them having all that money like they're like the person running like the Squid Game like might have ensured that I'm going to bring like in the case of like Info like the brother of Jun-ho like basically in his case like basically with money might have eventually ended up being like getting stolen or getting tricked into like him losing all that money he might his quantity of money he might have made winning like the 2015 Squid Game what might have been what might have happened certainly when the time so like since then he might have been struggling for until 2020 might have been what might have happened and that might be the precise reason for like when in like the beginning when Jun-ho had basically like found the apartment of his like brother in Ho like basically it was like not an extremely luxurious apartment like the reason for that would be precisely because of like him having lost all that money he would have made from like the 2015 Squid Game precisely due to like the work of like the billionaire who's been like running like Squid Game he might have like tricked and tricked like info and his mom might have totally lost all his money he had made after like winning like the 2015 Squid Game. It's definitely what might have happened is definitely my good favorite. So like with Jung-ho finding like the studio staff in like Info's home apartment. Like I'm remembering like what might have happened would be like in 2020, like I'm remembering like Info might have after losing his money, like Info might have definitely even though Info might have ended up being like winner of like the 2015 Squid Game. Like Ambassador Info might have gone through a lot of extreme suffering and the extreme major situation that they create by the time he won like the sixth game. Like he might have even won like the sixth game just by like just by absolute luck or like he might have been like the verge of that's why he might have just barely might have been able to like win like the sixth game. Might have been what might have happened in 2015 is definitely my remember. So that like he might have from that experience of like the Squid Games that he participated, Squid Game that he participated, went through in like 2015, he might have been so extremely scarred and traumatized that even though after that, like because of like the billionaire running in the Squid Game, like he might have lost all the money, like still Info might have been totally traumatized that like he might have been in absolute fear of like basically attempting to like run back into like Squid Game and trying another chance at winning six Squid Games and making money again. So like I'm wondering what might have happened would be like he might have been so extremely afraid. So like I'm wondering he might have decided like he might have not been able to like bring himself to like enter into like 2016 or like 2017 or 2018 or like 2019 the game might have been what might have happened especially when those everything but like by the time it was 2020 like I'm thinking like he might have had like absolutely no money at all to like survive at all that and like he might have had like once again he might have fallen into like betting or some sort of like other kind of like issues and might have once again formed like a huge step once again in his life as well might have been what might have happened for Info at that point, especially my best friend. So like Info at that point being desperate to like survive, like might have once again in like 2020 might have built up the courage and turned back into like the Squid Game in 2020. So like when Sang-yeon entered into like the Squid Game for like the first time in 2020, like it, at that point, like while Sang-yeon had played like the red light, green light game, like at that point, like in that successful game, like among like the candidates, definitely info might have been present. It's definitely my personal impression. So like after like the red light, after like and info might have definitely won and survived like the red light during like it win as well. It's definitely my personal impression. But like after like winning that red light, green light, games like through the majority like through the majority voting seems like they had basically left like the Squid Game at that point. Like I'm wondering among those few Squid Game candidates whom like the frontman had ordered to like monitor, like among those few Squid Game candidates that didn't return back to like the 2020 Squid Game uh, to start like to continue on with like the second Squid Game. Among those few Squid candidates that didn't make the return, like definitely one of among those few Squid candidates who was precisely info. This definitely my positive impression. So like I'm also bring like info's brother, like Jun-ho might have like probably assumed that info would be like right now within like the what would be but would have participated and entered into like the Squid Game. But like in actuality, like I'm also bring like after returning after like the red light, green light Squid Game, like he might have been once again totally that trauma might have kicked in and he might have decided to like basically not and he might have been so afraid and basically maybe like he might have not been able to like bring himself to like return back to like the Squid Game. So like I'm bring among the few Squid Game candidates who didn't return back to like the Squid Game in 2020 for the second time, like that among those few candidates, definitely one among them would be definitely be Info. Definitely my favorite. So like I'm considering right now Info would be like somewhere in that city is like the scenario that I'm considering. And Info would be like struggling to survive and Info would be like I'm considering maybe somewhere in the city like struggling to survive and without realizing this like example solely due to like him seeing the cars of like the Phrygian in like Info's room like Jun-ho like might have assumed that basically Jun-ho would be right now in like the current Phrygian. It's definitely what might have happened. It's definitely happened while so like my secondary impression is that like this would be the precise reason as well for like right now as like Jumpo went through like the list of players of like the 2020 Squid Game, like even while we saw San Gyeon's like name and photo, like the fact that like Jumpo didn't see like his brother Info's photo in like the 2020 list of Squid Game players, like would be precisely because of like Info not having, even though he might have initially entered into like the 2020 Squid Game, like after like the red light, green light after leaving the Squid Game after like the red light, green light Squid Game, like we might have not received the return. So like hence his like name and photo might have been removed from like the list of players in like the 2020 list of players of Squid Game. Is what might have happened is definitely my personal impression.